believe that leadership isn't a position or a role, it's an action and a choice. I believe that leadership can be learned. I believe that great leaders emerge from adversity. I believe that Happy Valley is full of great leaders. These are their stories. Welcome to the Penn State Leaders Podcast. Today I've got with me John Harrar, a student at Penn State. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. You're actually our first student guest, so I'm excited to do this. So tell us a little bit about who you are and how you came to Penn State.
Yep. So I know this is how we met on the Penn State golf courses, but we share a similar alma mater, both high school and college. So I grew up in a small town outside of Philly, Wallingford. A lot of people know media more, but I went to Strathaven. Always was involved in athletics. My mom played basketball at Slippery Rock, which is another state university. And then my dad was a basketball player at doesn't exist anymore, but a local college here. So always was involved in athletics. And as I was growing up, I kept growing and growing, kept getting taller. So basketball was a sport, and basketball helped me get to the Penn State University. Coach Patrick Chambers, who was the previous coach, is from where we're growing up. I'm actually having dinner with him tonight in media. He still keeps in contact. One of the best, the Chambers clan, as I call them, one of the best families I've ever met. Of course, they're Delconians too, but he gave me a shot to join the Penn State basketball team. This is my 5th year, so I actually graduated. I'm an alumni now. I graduated with a business management degree through SMEAL, and now I'm doing the master's program, Masters of Management and Organizational Leadership, which starts up the 18th orientation up at State College.
Great. So this is a great discussion to have with you. You're going into a master's program, going to learn about organizational leadership. Now, you played basketball, obviously, at Strathaven, but you also played football. Is that right?
I did play football. I wasn't the most talented basketball player, so not a lot of schools looked at me when I was in high school. So everyone was telling me to go play football, and I was gonna go. I committed to go play football at West Point. Would have been a lot different path than Penn State, but I'm glad I ended up here. As I said, Coach Chambers gave me the opportunity to come play basketball at what now I call home, Penn State.
Right. So when you were very much considering going to West Point, had even committed. So you had to be thinking about your role as being a leader, right? You were going to be an officer in the Army if you had gone through with that. Can you think a little bit about growing up and what made you think about leadership? Were there things that you did when you were younger, or people that you saw that kind of influenced your direction as you were thinking about West Point?
Yeah, so I was really lucky. I always say I got really lucky with the leaders that entered my life. In high school, I never really knew what leadership was. I always thought that leadership is lead by example. If coach calls me the captain, well, then I better be on time. I better work the hardest. I better lead by example. I didn't really get the ins and outs of communication, of the depth of leadership. But my high school basketball coach and football coach, they spent extra hours with me, trying to develop me as a person, and not just on the court or on the field. And then coming to Penn State, I'm 5 years younger than the people that are starting on the team, because college, and those 5 years matter. Those are 5 years of 6 a.m. workouts, of traveling to Michigan State, and those 5 years you have to grow up a lot. So I get to see how there's different types of leadership on the court and off the court. And then I'm gonna bring him up all the time, but Coach Chambers, he would give me resources. He would send podcasts my way, just quotes from whoever, NBA players, college football coaches. And then he would also give me reading recommendations, like John Maxwell, all the guys that write about leadership. So that's when I started to really dive in and kind of create my own leadership philosophy.
That's great. Yeah, it's something I think people don't realize about sports is obviously there's an athletic part to it, but how important leadership is. I actually had the opportunity to coach at the high school level, just a small school here in State College for 7 years, and what a difference it makes as a coach when you are getting leadership from your team, like when there's some clear leaders that emerge, and you can look back on a season and see what a difference it made to have strong leadership versus weak leadership, and how you as a coach have to make up for that. And
Mhm.
anytime the players are leading themselves, right, players leading other players, your job is so much easier as a coach. And at the high school level, sometimes you see that and sometimes you don't. And it really is, there's so much that people can learn from participating in sports about leadership, of leading and watching others lead.
Mhm. Leadership is the Spurs. I read a couple of pages in the book about the San Antonio Spurs when they had Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, that championship team, and they said the sole reason they won was because they had a player locker room. And what they mean by that is not a coach's locker room. If there was a problem, it was the players that handled it. It wasn't the coaches. Before the coaches could even say something to address the team, like, man, you did this. The players already handled it with inside their locker room. And I think that's what you're talking about in high school. When you see that, when the players take accountability of their own team, that's when you can have something special.
Yeah, I agree. And at least at the level that I was coaching, it was hit and miss whether you saw that. I remember one time, going into halftime of a tight game, and when one of the seniors looked at me, he's like, "Coach, can I talk to the team first?" And that was really cool to see. Right, here's someone who's taken leadership, and they're like, "Hey, I have something I want to give. We don't need the coach for this part. I have something I want to say to the players about how important this game is." And as a coach, that just feels great when you start to see that. Um, as you think back, one of the things that I say is that adversity helps leaders emerge. Can you think back, whether it's in sports or something else in your life, that you went through some adversity and how that has impacted your ability to lead?
Yeah, for sure. I can give an example outside of sports and then an example inside. So outside of sports, I would say when I was in seventh grade, my dad passed away from cancer. He smoked cigarettes, so he got lung cancer and it spread to his brain,
Mm.
spread everywhere. And the thing that really amazed me was how my mom stepped up. She didn't, I know in that circumstance, it could feel like, oh, well, now it's my time. Like, I have an older brother, so my mom never wanted my older brother to feel like, oh, well, now it's my time to step up. I have to, be the man of the house or anything like that. So I got to see my mom's leadership and how she handled the family, how she worked both jobs of being a mom, but also being a dad and dual parenting. Uh, my mom's a killer. So that adversity that we faced as a family definitely made me into the person I am now, and having the example of my mom helped me kind of develop my own leadership philosophy. And then on the court, I would say just getting to Penn State. I mean, I felt like I was about 7 years old again, trying to play like high schoolers. Thought I was like some elementary school kid trying to play on a high school varsity team. I just didn't know what I was doing, and I couldn't even compete with the guys athletically, skill wise. There was a big gap getting there. So just that adversity, just I couldn't quit though. That's the one thing I always told myself is you have to show up. I have to show up every day and going there just knowing that the big Mike Watkins, who was 5 years older than me, is gonna have a day with me in the post, out rebound me, but I'm just gonna have to show up every day and work. Um, I think that's what whenever I have to tell anyone who's trying to make a college sport, trying to get a scholarship, or I mean, it applies to everything in life, but no matter what stage you are at in life, you just have to show up every day. As a freshman, knowing I was going to get my butt whooped, I had to show up. I knew I wasn't going to see the court that year. I knew that I'm the fourth option at center, but if I don't show up, bring the best attitude, then well, I have no chance of going anywhere. I like to say that you got to get in the business of showing up. So as an athlete, I try to get in the business of showing up, and that also applies to my career now. Being a fifth year senior and trying to lead Penn State basketball, it's not like I can stop showing up. I have to stay in that business of showing up every day, trying to make ends meet, and then trying to lead a team, trying to bring a team and have others help me. Leadership doesn't stop. When I leave Penn State basketball, there's going to be a new John Harrar that comes in and that's going to lead the team. So as a program, you want to build leaders as you're on your own leadership journey.
That's awesome. Two great stories. I mean, thank you for sharing about your dad and that adversity and what you saw from your mom. And, it's clear as I listen to you that, that idea of showing up every day and getting after it, regardless of the circumstance, right? That's something I'm sure you saw from your mom every day, having to go through the adversity that she did. And then the other thing I love about the second story is how humbling that must have been, right? So you're at Strathaven High School, you're a big dog there, right? Whole school looks up to this guy. He's going to Penn State, D1, and all of a sudden you show up in this place and, like you said, you feel like a little kid. You're probably getting thrown around and you feel like you're nowhere near where you need to be. And yet, like to your point, you just keep showing up, right? I'm sure there's times when it's easy to feel like, boy, I could give up on this, right? I don't know that I'm ever going to make it to the level that I see these guys up, but you kept showing up, right? And got better. And to the point where now, and, I know last season, as I watched you play, how much people talked about you being the foundation of that team, not always the best player, but clearly the leader of that team, right? Even, and as you developed athletically and skill wise, there was no question about your ability to lead and what other team members kind of looked up to you. And so that's really interesting as you think about being a leader. Were there things that you did in those first few years that you started to think, even though I'm at the bottom rung, like I can be a leader? Or did it take a few years as you started to grow into your position to say, hey, I'm not just surviving anymore. Now people are looking to me and I'm becoming a leader. Like, can you think about that transition and how that happened for you?
Yeah. So I have to give credit to my high school coaches and the coaches that were on the staff, because my high school coach, he was with me throughout every week of my freshman career. He's still with me now, but really my freshman career, he was telling me, so the game would end and I would play 1 minute. If it was a blowout or anything like that, I would get those minutes. But his thing he always told me was like, so you played 1 minute, but these other guys are playing the whole game. So how can you go make up for that? And he told me to go, if I play 2 minutes, the college game is 40 minutes. So 40 minus 2 is 38. Go get a 38-minute workout in. Or if I play 5 minutes, go get a 35-minute workout and find how you can make up that time. And I think that showed the leadership by example of trying to just work hard. And I credit my high school coach with that. I mean, I did the work, but doing the work's easy. Having that someone hold you accountable like that is what makes the difference. And then what Coach Chambers did at Penn State was create a leadership council, he called it. And it was kind of one person from every class, or maybe just the people that the players would say, yeah, he should be on the leadership council. This is a guy who does it right, and his leadership can help us win. So at the end of my freshman year, sophomore, junior, and senior year, coach would meet with the leadership council maybe once a week, twice a week, depending on the time of year. And he would just bring us in and kind of ask what he can do for us, but at the same time kind of give us hints like, maybe let's do this different. Let's try this. Let's work on this. So just hearing that from someone who's run a high level basketball program for a decade helps you think kind of outside the box, instead of just seeing what's on the court, what's happening on the court, kind of thinking outside the box and getting behind the scenes on how to run everything.
Yeah. So even then in your freshman, sophomore year, you were identified within your class as a leader. Is that right? Being put on that leadership council.
Right.
Yeah. That's impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that idea because, I've talked about this in some other podcasts because I've had some folks who were prior military, and this idea of listening to the people that work for you. And in this case, a coach listening to the players. This idea that you're just, as a leader, telling people what to do is just really false. Anyone who's been involved in any kind of serious leadership knows you have to be listening to the people that work for you and have that open dialogue and that relationship and that trust, or you're not going to get far as a leader at all.
Yeah, so that was a great point. My freshman year, I always thought leadership, I would see the leaders of the team and I would be like, man, they have it. Like I was like, they can do what they want, like stuff like that. But leadership and serving are synonyms. That's what I say. If you're not serving as a leader, well, then that's not leadership. You're just in my business I'm in, basketball athletics, it's another one of those dudes that don't help the team win about themselves. So that's why you have to make those two words synonyms, leadership and serving. Servant leadership, I know that's a term in the business world where you're asking, how can I help you? You meet with someone, you can kind of say, this is what we're going to do forward. But then at the end of it, it's like, how can I help you? What can I do for you to make you do your job easier? My brother's with RSM, accounting firm, and we talk about this all the time, how he'll have bosses and how he responds to every boss is different, because if someone is just telling him orders or you got to do this, you got to do that, he's not going to respond to that because he doesn't know what to do. But if someone will give him the same orders but then says, how can I help you, how can I assist you, I can give 30 minutes of my day to help you go through this and that, let's do this together, that's the servant leadership that my brother will respond to, and every human will respond to.
That's right.
I think that's why you got to make those two words synonyms.
Yeah, I love that. So it's why you look back and part of why you look back on your mom as a leader, right? As an influence to you, is what she did for you and your brother and serving you all to raise you under the circumstances that, that life had dealt her.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned, well, let me ask one more question. So now as you've gone from having kind of an informal leadership role within the team as part of this leadership council, were you a captain this past season?
Yeah.
And I'm going to guess that, not going to speak for Coach Shrewsbury, but he's probably looking at you as a captain. Have they decided yet on captains for the upcoming season?
Oh, no, not yet. I'm not really sure. So we never did captains. It was always the leadership council.
Okay.
But yeah, they were pretty much the same thing. But
yeah,
no, we have not. We're all just trying to get to know each other if we're going into basketball. We're all just trying to feel each other out. We had a meeting because we're going away for 2 weeks, and Coach Shrews, he was trying to figure out the personalities of every leader, because we're bringing in 5 leaders from 5 different teams in the years past. So everyone's going to have their own way of leading, and how can you gel that into making it the best situation for everyone?
Yeah, I will say, having been through transitions, in various kinds of my career, that's hard, right? It's you've got changes in the leadership with Coach Shrewsbury and his staff are changing, and changes in who's going to be on the team. And that's a challenge for him as a leader, and a real opportunity for you to step in and help him by being, a leader within the team. Have you thought about kind of what your role is this season and how you might have to lead differently this coming season?
Yeah, I the role this season, I think the big thing for me is how can Penn State basketball win now, and then how can it win in the years upcoming. I just want Penn State basketball to succeed. I have that. I know everyone has a definition for underdog, but I don't consider Penn State basketball an underdog. But people, I've been on the team 4 years. I've talked to the alumni of Penn State basketball going all the way back to like 81, and from 2000 to the Crispin era to whatever era, Taylor Battle. And I just know every single one says that Penn State basketball, people just write us off in the Big Ten. So I just want to be a part of how can we change that script. I want to do things the right way, win with the right kind of people here at Penn State. I think that's the big thing for me. How can I lead this team to win, and not only win, but win the right way and do it at a high level?
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, there'll be a lot of people cheering you on to do that. This town's is definitely ready for that. And you guys were really close a couple of years ago before COVID came. That was brutal to watch.
We had
as
it,
a fan.
Yeah, we hit the flow. What I just said in the past 2 minutes, that's what we were doing.
Yeah.
We were winning the right way. We were winning at a high level, and it's a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
That was clearly a time of adversity where you guys are playing best basketball, maybe that's been played at Penn State since the Final Four team, let's say, and it's taken away, completely out of your control. Did you learn anything from? Had to be obviously disappointing feels like too small a word, but at some point you have to say, okay, that happened. Now I got to move on. What did I learn from that? Is there anything you think you learned from that helps you lead in the future?
Yeah, I think a skill that I didn't have before that I'm still working on, it's adaptability. I think being a leader, you have to be adaptable. And when that happened, I was working out. I remember it. So we fly home from the Big Ten tournament, and I asked, like, I'm staying up at school, because there were talks like, oh, give it a week, and then like we might like go back into it. So I was like, all right, well, let's work out. Let's be ready to go if it happens. And then it doesn't happen. And how can I not just go sit on my butt when I get home? How can I adapt? How can I get ready for next season? How can I rest? How can I stay connected with my teammates? It's not going to look the same as it did in the past. So how can I adapt to keep building the program? So that's the one thing I took away from COVID was as far as adaptability goes, I didn't score high. So now I'm trying to change that. I'm trying to learn that. How can I be adaptable to get the results I want in different circumstances?
Yeah, that's a great point. Although I don't know that anyone had any kind of script for what happened, right? The whole world was not ready for what happened. But I love that, you took some away to learn from that. And you're right, as a leader, you have to know when circumstances change and when do I stick to the plan and when do I have to scrap the plan and just kind of ad lib it. So yeah, that's absolutely a skill to learn. That's great.
Yeah. What would you take away from COVID being in your industry?
Boy, that's a good question. Yeah, you're not supposed to ask the host questions on this,
No,
but
I do my own podcast, so this is nice not having to ask questions. I like this.
I think that's definitely, so that was one thing, is adaptability of knowing, okay, we have to change. The other thing that I think that I saw is the importance of keeping the team connected. So, we all went remote, and our particular team, we were really close to each other. We worked very closely. We shared a physical space together, a lot of collaboration amongst our IT team. And all of a sudden we went remote, and everyone's dealing with not just how do I work, but like, what's this doing to my life, right? Some people are isolated because they live alone, and now, they're not going into work and seeing people every day. Some people have little kids that they're trying to take care of and doing remote work and trying to help them do school. Everyone's concerned about what's this going to do, my own personal health, my family members' health, the country. It's got all these stresses going on. And I think you talked about this, is how do you stay connected? And so, just we ramped up our communication with people. So we started doing daily meetings face to face, and we connected, and part of it, we did like a question of the day, which is, and most of them were almost silly, right? They weren't work related. They were like, what's the worst movie you've ever seen? But we got to know each other better by doing that day after day, and connected. And I think we were closer coming out of the pandemic now than we were before we started. And that was important to help people, not just to get the work done. I mean, getting the work done, having everyone connected to do the work was really important. I think it helped everyone as people to get through the pandemic. And so I really credit, my leadership team. We worked together, we came up with those ideas, and day to day, people could count on 9 o'clock every day. We're going to get together, we're going to connect, and it gave people some stability in their life. So I think that was something that I learned about the importance of connection and how that built trust, even when you're virtual.
Yeah, I love that. That trust is very important no matter what you're doing. If you're a leader or if you're a follower and there's no trust, you're not gonna win, not gonna succeed.
Yeah.
How would you say you build trust? Is it through obviously communication, but what tips do you have if you were telling another leader how you could build trust?
I think having open, honest conversation, and a lot of times that involves a leader being vulnerable. So talking about things that maybe make you a little uncomfortable, talking about things that you don't understand, or things that you need help with, things you've done wrong in the past, or mistakes, being honest about mistakes that you make. I think all of that helps build trust. The other is when you say you're going to do something, you do it. And that sounds so obvious, but when you as a leader, especially when you do it publicly, but even in one-on-ones, if I say I'm going to do something for you, regardless of all the other things I have going on, I better do it. Right. And so being dependable, I would say, and that vulnerability and openness, that you and I can have an honest dialogue, and you trust me enough to tell me what you think and to push back against something I'm saying, or ask hard questions of me, and know that I'm not going to overreact to it. And I'm not going to jump down your throat. I'm not going to embarrass you, whether you do it one-on-one or in a group. Those are the things that I think really build trust. And all of that is like showing that you care. Back to your point of servant leadership, when someone cares, right? When someone's mailing it in and they're doing two other things while they're on the Zoom call with you, or they're really dialed in and they're engaged and they care about what you're saying. And you can tell just at a human level, that. And when people sense that, that's just going to build trust.
Yeah, I think the underrated quality of any leader is passion. Like when you show you care, when you're passionate. If you have a passionate leader, the buy-in from everyone else can be very special.
Yeah, right. I think that's a great point. Absolutely. So you talked a little bit about, Coach Chambers giving you books and podcasts, and you've talked about some of the activities you've done. What would you recommend to people? So there's someone out there, maybe they're not a leader yet, and they look at you and they say, maybe they're a student and they say, hey, I want to learn more about leadership. I want to be able to do the kind of things that I see John doing. What are some of the things that you've learned that then you would pass on to say were good resources for people to learn about leadership?
Yeah. So I would go with John Maxwell. I know he's a man of faith, and I know that can turn some people off, but even if you're not a person of faith, he still can teach you a lot of valuable lessons. He says that you got to come up with a daily plan for leadership. And I know a lot of people my age, that just sounds like a lot of hoopla, like you gotta sit down in your room 10 minutes and meditate. Like it's nothing like that, but maybe every day you can just read 10 pages of a leadership book. And I been dating a girl for 4 years now, and both of us are just we kind of try to get on our motto is you got to always get better every day. Like if you're not doing something to better yourself, then you're struggling. And to start, we would always say we're going to read 10 pages a day. And I would give her books that I liked. They were like How to Win Friends and Influence People, real old time book. And she would read it and be like, I just don't want to read this. I'm not interested in this at all. So then she would pick a book from a leader, a female business leader who's made her own makeup company. So you can read any books, the message is always the same. So you don't think you have to pick up a book that Abraham Lincoln wrote and will bore you out of your mind. You can find any leadership book, you can look in any leadership direction. There's great podcasts, but I think having a daily routine, my friends and I say that success is doing the common thing for an uncommon amount of time. So it's not like you have to start today and go for a 3-mile run, go to a leadership seminar, read 2 chapters in the book, do meditate. Like you don't have to do that. It's just doing the common things for uncommon amount of time. You have to do it consistently. And going back to what you say, there's this great podcast I listen to, is Ed Milet. He's a business leader. Again, people can be turned off by him by his private planes or whatever. He likes cars. But something that he always says is oh, now I forget what I'm saying by doing that. Oh, how you build confidence is just by following through on your commitments. So as a basketball player, if I say I'm going to shoot 100 free throws today and I don't shoot 100 free throws, that my confidence is shot. That really affects me, just because the act I said, I'm going to go in the gym today, I'm going to work on my game, and then the voice inside our head, which everyone has, is like, maybe we can go do something else, go hang out with friends. So once you get in a routine of breaking those commitments to yourself, you're going to lose confidence, and then the consistency goes out the window. So I think building that plan of just keeping those commitments to yourself every day. If you say you're waking up at 7 a.m. to maybe go for a morning walk before you have to go to work, keep that commitment to yourself. That's how you build confidence. That's how you get that consistency. And I think that's how you become a leader and build those habits.
Yeah, 100% agree. You make promises to yourself, and just as much as you don't want to break promises to other people, don't break them to yourself too.
Exactly. Yeah.
I went through a leadership program, the Big Ten IT leaders program, where we got to travel around to different schools. And that was a huge emphasis, was you get better through daily practices. And so regardless of what those practices are, you got to do them day by day. That's the only way you get better. So I think that absolutely applies in sports. It applies in leadership, and applies to life. So I love that motto. Give me that motto again. Common
Which
things.
one? Do common things for uncommon amount of time.
I like that. I really like that. It's a good one.
I've learned that the 30-day challenges don't work. You want to change, it's cool on social media, but I don't think anything's going to happen from a 30-day challenge.
Yeah. I mean, you could maybe get rid of a bad habit in 30 days.
Oh yeah.
But you can't develop something that's going to change you as a person long-term in 30 days. Yeah, totally agree. The 30-day diet, that as soon as it's over, then you're back to doing what you've been doing. Like, what good.
Right. Yeah, that's the example. Yeah. You got to be consistent for a long period of time, and it's hard. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying that I do it every day, but it's just the next day, if I do break, I better do it. I better get right back after it. No one's perfect. That's what I learned too, is that at the start of this whole leadership, it was after my sophomore years when I really tried to start learning about it and start reading about it. And I would just start, and I went all in on it. What can I do right now to make myself the best? Like, I was so, not addicted, but like so obsessed with just, what can we do? What can we do? Doing way too much without getting anything back. So it's all about what can I do now, and just keep growing on that. And then it's gonna break. You just gotta get up the next day and do it again. No one's perfect.
Yeah. And I think what's really cool is that I see you've made this transition. I think a lot of this is how I was when I was younger. Like leadership is one, it's something that someone in a position of authority does. That was kind of the first misconception, as opposed to the fact that no, anyone can be a leader, right? You can influence anyone. And the other is that you either have it or you don't. Like some people are leaders and some people aren't. And that's just not true, right? To your point, you can study leadership and get better at it and build practices, even if it doesn't feel natural to you or it's not something you've done. And you figure that out early on, which I think is awesome, because it took me a long time. I think probably a similar time. I went into ROTC at Penn State, and that's where I really understood what leadership was, and it's something that you studied and worked at. And the other thing that's cool about making that transition is now you're starting to watch other leaders, and you're starting to learn just from your experiences of being led by other people. You can learn a lot just from being thoughtful about, okay, I see what they did there, and did that work or didn't work, and could I try to do that? And you can learn a lot just from watching.
You can. Leadership is very hard to. I never say it's easy, and because there's going to be games in sports, everything is so feedback oriented. If I go out, and it's going to happen this year, I'm going to have a game where I miss 5 layups, 5 free throws, end up scoring 4 points, 4 rebounds, and I played 30 minutes. There's going to be a game like that. It's how can I still help my team win? How can I still lead in a circumstance like that? It's never going to be perfect. It's hard. That is so hard to do. It's way easier to say, but when you're in that situation, it's so easy to just throw the towel in and not wake up the next day wanting to get better. That's what leadership is, and it's hard. And whether it's sports, business, all the responsibility goes on you. You could be a part of the organization where you don't even know what's happening, and you can just show up to work, do what you have to do, leave, and not think about it. But I know for some leaders, they are lying in bed thinking about what happened. You gotta, no, it's hard. It's a hard job. I'm never gonna say, let's be a leader today or something like. It's a want to for sure.
Yeah. Well, and when you're having that bad day, there's a fourth string freshman center who's watching, John Harrar to see what's he going to do on a day. How does he react to that bad game, and who's going to be learning from you, and seeing you maybe learn more on your bad day than on your good day, right?
Oh, you do. That's for sure. You do.
Yeah. So, John, you mentioned you have a podcast, and I'm sure you have some social media presence. So, tell our listeners about kind of how people can learn more about you, and maybe listen to your podcast or see you on social media.
Yeah. So I actually got off social media for about 2 years just because of those bad days on social media. Those bad days can make it a lot worse. If you want to read all the Penn State basketball fans' comments about you when you're having those bad days, it's not fun. So I decided to take a break, really help my mental strength, and just learn that it's not something that I need in my life. I'm fine without it. I can live. But as I get older now, I get to, on social media, you get to see people like Lamar Stevens, who was my teammate and is now on the Cavs, the NBA team. I get to see what he's doing. He just played a summer league game last night. I get to see his highlight, like stuff like that. You get to keep in contact with Julian Moore, who graduated, now is in New York. Just stuff like that. I get to keep up with those people. So it's a great tool. You just can't abuse it. But yeah, I started a podcast with my teammate Marion Jones. He just transferred down to Florida, but we're keeping it up. It's called the Midnight Domino Show. It started as a joke. It actually started because now everyone knows about the Leadership Council. We had a Leadership Council meeting during COVID, and we were talking about ideas to stay connected as a team. So Marion and I started a podcast and we interviewed every teammate and we kind of gave them their own show to learn about them, learn what they're doing during the pandemic. And I mean, if you want to listen to the first couple episodes, they're very bad. It's very bad questioning, interviewing skills. And I'm not gonna say they're good now, but I think we've grown a little better. We're still keeping up with it. I just think it's a fun way to keep in touch with MJ, who's gonna be down in Florida, learn about his season, and we can keep bringing on guests. And it's another learning opportunity. I can bring on someone that's played professional basketball, or we brought on some coaches, some college coaches, learning their own philosophy on how they like to coach, how they like to recruit. So I don't know, I use it as selfishly as a tool for myself to learn, but also I think we put out some pretty cool stuff here and there. So yeah, it's called the Midnight Domino Show though, on Apple Podcasts, and we have like Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff.
Cool. Well, we'll put links to all that in the show notes for this one. And,
Awesome.
I think you said something that I think is really important for what makes a podcast successful. And I don't know if this one will be successful or not, but it has to start with a topic that you're interested in learning about. You know what I mean? And that will come through, right? If it's something that you want to learn from, and you're just letting other people listen into you learning about talking about a topic that you think's cool. And if people like it, they like it. And if they don't, they don't, but you've gotten what you wanted out of it. Right. So I think that has a lot to do with at least the podcast I listen to, whether they, bring people in and are successful, is they're interested in whatever they're talking about, right? They're trying to get something out of that conversation.
I could gladly say that if no one listened to the podcast, I would still do it.
Yeah.
It's very selfish for me just to catch up. Sometimes we talk about the stupidest stuff too. We're 21-year-old college students just talking. So I'm not going to say everything's going to help you in life, but if there's a nugget here and there, quick 10 minutes of some serious talk, then it's a win. It's a win-win.
Great. Well, John, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your leadership at Penn State, not just of the basketball team, but, really the whole university. I think the whole student body has gotten to know you and watches you and thinks of you as a leader at Penn State. So it was great to have you on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you for doing this, Dave. I think what makes Penn State so special, you've been here a couple more years than I've been here, but the one thing I've learned is that the community is why Penn State thrives and does so well. It's people like you and this great community that we're in. I think that's the number one pillar of Penn State, is community and giving that sense of community. And I mean, you're doing a podcast for the Penn State community, and I think that's why Penn State wins when it wins.
That's
so
right.
Thank you.
And I think what you said about doing it the right way, I think that's something that resonates with all Penn Staters. And I think that's part of what helps build that community. And so when we see people like you and our basketball team doing it the right way, the community just loves supporting that. So it's beyond just being a fan, and it's something deeper than that. And so we appreciate that. So again,
for sure. Thank you.
Thanks for your time, and good luck this season.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Happy Valley Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. Give us a review and share us with others. You can follow us on Twitter at HV Leader Podcast and on YouTube at Happy Valley Leaders Podcast. Remember, leadership is an action and a choice, so go be a leader.